But of course, I've been simplifying things so far. This business of not being able infallibly to distinguish knowing from believing is actually a lot more complicated than I've allowed. Though the flat earth example, I think, already suggests how that complication works. I think we need here to distinguish between what I want to call positive knowledge from negative knowledge. Positive knowledge is hard to come by. It's unusual. Just what shape exactly is the Earth? Well, what shape is it? It's not exactly a globe, it's sort of flattened at either end. And to speak of either end already shows that it's not quite a globe. So what shape exactly is it? Very hard to say. I don't think I can. Somebody else might be able to. But of course, what shape the Earth is not, it's not flat, it's not a cube and so on, is a lot easier. And I think this point is generalizable. Knowing what's not the case is far easier than knowing what is the case. And again, this is true of both factual or scientific knowledge and of moral or political knowledge. We very rarely know exactly what is the case. The exactly right dose of an anti-cancer drug, for instance. But we know very well that a whole range of doses, perhaps an indefinitely large range of doses, is not right. We're unlikely to know the exact length of the River Thames. Anybody? Just as well. But we do know it's not 50 miles, and we know it's not 500 miles, and so on. And as with factual or scientific knowledge, so with moral and political knowledge. Consider Israel's policies against the Palestinians. Or think about distributive justice, the question of how resources, wealth, should be shared among us. We might not know exactly what's right in those two cases, but we do know that a lot of things are wrong. And I'm going to come back to that distinction between positive and negative knowledge shortly. But first, I really want to emphasize this very general point that the knowledge-belief distinction holds in moral and political matters no less than in scientific ones. And I want to emphasize that because it's something I know the vast majority of philosophers are going to disagree with. We can, I think, at least sometimes know that something's right or wrong. Morality and politics aren't just a matter of what different people happen to believe. If you like to put it this way, and those of you who know me know I do like to put it this way, morality and politics are no less objective than anything else. Now that looks like a very strange claim. Maybe it is a very strange claim. Partly because I think the word objective is a word that very often puts people off. What does it mean? What does the claim amount to that some moral and political matters are objectively like this or like that? Well, this is where I go back to the notion of negative knowledge. What I have in mind when I say that a claim is objective is that all the alternatives to that claim have been ruled out, so far as we know, as not the case. How they've been ruled out is another matter. And here factual claims and moral, political claims, value claims, of course, do differ. The Thames isn't 5,000 miles long. Measure the thing and you'll see. What Israel's doing in Gaza is morally indefensible. Think about it and you'll see. So what does that mean? The measuring is relatively simple, I take it. But what's this thinking about it and see amount to? What does it mean? It's not like measuring. It's not concrete. It's not tangible. I think it means very roughly, and I know that many of you will disagree with this, it means thinking about whether or not it makes sense. That's to say, it's more like the difference between 3 and 2 is 5 and 3 and 2 is 7, first makes sense, the second does not, then it's like the difference between the Thames is 5,000 miles long and the Thames is roughly about 215 miles long. I know many of you disagree with that and that I'm putting too much weight on the possibility of making sense. And I hope we'll carry on argue about it, not just tonight, but for a good few years. But because of that, this seems a good moment to go off at a little bit of a tangent. Not a very long one, but a bit. To say something about the way I'm trying to proceed here. To say something about the importance of making mistakes in philosophy. Because I think that's an area of philosophical thought that is undervalued. The importance of making mistakes. Now you've noticed, obviously, I can see that you've noticed, that I've made some very strong claims and that I've done so pretty unapologetically so far. Now I've been doing that deliberately because philosophy, unlike just about any other academic discipline, isn't all about not making mistakes. In fact, philosophers need to allow themselves and to allow other people to make mistakes, to make lots of mistakes. Because it's in understanding how and why something actually is a mistake that we get to understand better the subject of the mistake. I'm going to quote Wittgenstein now, as those of you who know me is quite unusual, but he did say something very interesting once. Wittgenstein once said to a speaker at a philosophy seminar who just realized before they said it, they're about to say something really pretty silly, which we do all the time. No, say what you wanted to say. Be crude and we'll get there. I think that says something important about philosophy. If philosophy is not just to be a sort of sophisticated word game, which it sometimes looks like, if philosophy is to be serious, and I think philosophy has to be serious or it's not worthwhile at all, back to those Oxford graduates drivelling on about the big society, then it's the mistakes that matter. We all know, after all, whether we think of ourselves as doing philosophy or not, we've been told often enough that we learn by making mistakes. But if that's going to work, if we are going to learn from our mistakes, instead of being intimidated by our mistakes, instead of allowing other people to intimidate us when we make mistakes, then we've got to be allowed to be mistaken. Now in this, as in much else, of course, philosophy tells us what we already know, but what we've probably overlooked or forgotten that we once knew. Put it slightly differently, and some of you will have heard this refrain before, philosophy, although it's an abstract discipline, is also something that all of us do. Most often, of course, as children, before our parents and teachers can't stand any more of it and tell us to stop asking bloody awkward questions. To that extent, we're all philosophers. And all serious conversation is potentially philosophical. You might even think, like Plato, that at least some philosophical knowledge consists in recalling what in some sense is already known. But I shan't pursue that one.